Hi, it's Edward, back with another video. Please take a moment to click the thumbs up button below and consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your support. Today I read an interesting article on Yahoo Finance, put out by Fortune and written by Sydney Lake, titled, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway and Zillow say mortgage rates can't fall enough for Americans to afford a home. This title immediately caught my attention. The author of this article said, mortgage rates have remained stubbornly high, hovering near 7%, well above the sub 3% rates during the pandemic. That makes home ownership increasingly unaffordable for many Americans, as home prices have risen over 50% since 2020. My friends, I don't agree with the author. Our current interest rate environment is not stubbornly high. We are in a more normal interest rate environment. I, for one, would like to see interest rates higher than what they are. I think we should incentivize savers. Those sub 3% rates were artificially low. The government should never have allowed that to happen. Now we are paying the price. Those who own assets have benefited from all of the inflation in the past several years. Those who have not owned assets are now dealing with a more expensive world. And many are resorting to credit cards, buy now, pay later loans, etc. in order to survive, because their pay has not increased as fast as the cost of everything else in life. There are a lot of people who are part of the working poor who are truly struggling now. Getting back to the article, the author said on Tuesday, Zillow economist analyst Arnashna Prakash reported mortgage rates would need to drop to 4.43% for a typical home to be affordable to an average buyer. But that kind of a rate decline is currently unrealistic. This economist also said not even a 0% interest rate would make a typical home affordable in New York, Los Angeles, Miami, San Francisco, San Diego, or San Jose. How sad is that? Many Americans have been priced out of the real estate market, and it is truly sad. I'm afraid we may become a renter nation, and we may reach a point where some people won't even be able to afford rent. We may see multiple generations all living in one home. That is what the future may hold for a lot of everyday Americans. Maybe some of you know people right now who are all crammed into one home, and they are doing that because it is the only option. They cannot afford their own place. I drive through some subdivisions and I see the driveway completely full of cars. I see both sides of the street completely full of cars, and I see garages that are completely packed with personal property. People are treating their garages like a storage unit. And I believe there are a lot of families living in some of these homes. That's why you see so many cars, and that's why you see so much personal property stuffed in these garages. I'm sure that is not always comfortable. I can imagine some people have to wait in line to be able to use the restroom when you have that many people in a home. The author of this article went on to reference Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, who said, many homeowners are reluctant to put their homes on the market and give up the low mortgage rates they already have. To them, high price gains won't mitigate their ability to pay more for another home at significantly higher interest rates. Well, I understand this, but if we enter an ugly recession and we see a lot of job losses, some people will have no choice but to put their home on the market. They may no longer be able to afford the mortgage payment. Unemployment checks are pretty small. Some folks may have to relocate for a job in a different state or maybe a different country. Some people will have to sell their homes even if they don't want to. We could see a lot more inventory on the market if that happens, and that could result in price declines for many homes. I'm going to share a quote with you in this article. Some first-time buyers are turning to long-term renting or even co-living models because the idea of owning a home has become so out of reach. Others are relying more on family support to get into the market. Well, I understand co-living firsthand. When I graduated from college, I got my first job teaching high school, and I was only making $29,000 a year. I knew I had to live as cheap as possible so I could save money to be able to purchase my first property. So I had multiple roommates, and we all shared a 4-bedroom apartment, and we split costs 4 ways. I lived incredibly cheap. There was a buffet across the street from the apartment complex, and they would allow you to fill a to-go container with as much food as you could for a flat price. So I would go there, I would pick the best food I could, fill up that container, and I would try to eat off that container for as many days as possible. When I was teaching high school, we also had the ability to purchase school lunches at employee pricing, and I would often try to take advantage of that and eat a really good hearty lunch. I was living as cheap as possible, and eventually I was able to purchase my first rental property before I ever purchased a primary residence. I started cash flowing, I purchased another rental property, and eventually I purchased a primary residence, and I was able to move all those roommates into my primary residence and begin renting to them. I was living in my primary residence for free because all of their rent covered my mortgage payment. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices in order to get ahead, and that's what I did. And I really took it to the extreme. When I moved my 3 roommates into my primary residence and began charging them rent, I gave them the nice bedrooms. I converted an old porch into another bedroom, and I lived in that porch. It was only 90 square feet. It had 1 vent duct, and it was the longest run to the furnace. So it got extremely cold in that room during the winter. I remember waking up sometimes and seeing frost on the windows. There were a lot of windows because it had been an old porch. It was also not fun in the summertime because it got extremely hot in that room. Imagine living in a 90 square foot room and dealing with extreme temperatures. But I made that sacrifice so that my roommates could have the nicer rooms because I wanted them to stay living there and continuing to pay rent so that I could benefit from the cash flow and use it to make my mortgage payment. I did not want to pay that payment on my own because I wanted to save as much money as I could to invest for my future, which I did by purchasing additional rental properties. Sometimes extreme sacrifices are necessary in life to get ahead. Not a lot of people are willing to go to the extreme like that. Some people want to have niceties. They want to have a luxury apartment. They want to have really nice furniture, even if it's rented furniture. They want to have their expensive coffee every morning. They want to go out to a nice lunch every day. They want to DoorDash food into the home in the evening so they don't have to leave when they're watching their favorite streaming program on television. A lot of people have grown accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and that's okay if that's what people want to do. But they may not be able to get ahead financially doing that depending on their income. I had a very low income when I was young, so I had to make sacrifices to be able to get ahead. I did not enjoy a lot of luxuries back then. I was very hyper-focused on saving and investing as much as possible. I read some of the comments beneath this article, and I found them to be really interesting. I'll share some of them with you. This commenter said, "When I was trying to buy a house, I saved every penny. We didn't eat out much. No tattoos, no vacation, no fancy cell phone plan. I drove an older car and still do. My wife did work, but we lived and acted like we were living off of one income. Same when we had kids. We never splurged. But now that we have our own home and kids have graduated from college, we are debt-free. Those were our priorities. Poor people stay poor pretending to be rich. Rich people stay rich pretending to be poor. The next commenter said, my wife and I had to give each of our children gifts of about $300,000 each to help offset the prices of new homes. Most family homes are about $600,000, which is much too high for a young family to afford. So we basically knocked the price in half so that they still have $300,000 mortgages, which is a more reasonable financial burden for couples trying to establish themselves. In today's economy, families must help each other out to get ahead. Well, these children are fortunate to have parents that were able to provide them with $300,000 gifts. I know of parents who have done this for their children, and those children are truly blessed. The next commenter said, what is our leadership doing about it? Absolutely nothing. Biden also did nothing. Harris had no plan. This is bipartisan laziness. Americans can't afford food, can't afford gas, can't afford a home, and certainly can't afford insurance or utilities. And they call this MAGA. One thing is for sure, our representatives are surely making a lot of money off of it. Well, my friends, these commenters always have interesting things to say. Please keep in mind, these are the thoughts of the commenters and not me. The next commenter said, a massive recession is the only way for housing to correct, along with all the froth in the stock market, and crypto turd gets flushed down the toilet. What do you think about all this? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to the channel. I want to extend a special thanks to everyone who has subscribed to this channel. I want to also thank all of my channel members. If you would like to become a channel member, there is a link in the description beneath this video. You can read more about the different membership levels. Please also check out some of the great books I suggest you consider reading in the description below. I've included Amazon affiliate links to these books. As an Amazon associate, I earn from qualifying purchases. Stay healthy and wealthy. I'll see everyone in the next video.